particular kind of Caribbean culture in the 80s, and going to dance halls, as we call them. And for those who are familiar with the Brooklyn that era, they'll remember names like Tilden Ballroom or Starlight Ballroom, or again, these sort of places where a lot of the folks who walk on the other side of the law, know, hung out socially. So
Can you
yeah,
tell
go
the
ahead.
story of the Starlight? Because you had a couple of
Yeah,
weird brushes with death,
yeah,
and the one in the Starlight just was chilling.
yes. I have a cousin who occasionally jokes, "It's a miracle you made it out of Brooklyn." And, and this is a story that I don't think well, I don't think I knew my mom didn't know until I wrote about it in the Village Voice, and there's probably stuff she still doesn't know about. But one of the times where came a little close to not being here was at Starlight Ballroom, which was by day, it was a kind of meeting hall sort of place. They would even sometimes have evangelical church services there, but the place would convert on weekend nights into a party hall. And it was 2 blocks away from where we lived. And it was the place to be. Like, it would just come alive, like Church Avenue in those days in Brooklyn. It was kind of hopping every night, but on the weekends it would just come alive, and it'd be this pageantry of people and sound and color, and the soundtrack was usually sort of reggae and and hip hop, and this very sort of Caribbean driven place. And one night, now by this time I'd been living in Freeport, Long Island, but I would come back to Brooklyn like almost every weekend to hang with my friends. And one night, a group of us decided we're going to go to Starlight. I don't remember who the act was, but there was an act there that was, interesting, and it was, as they would say today, the night was popping. So we're in there, a group of us. I'm 16. This is summer 1987, and I'm having the time of my life. Like, one of my friends had a cousin or someone, a beautiful girl who just met that night. And when you're 16 and you just met a girl who you think likes you and you like her and you're dancing, like, that's like the height of everything. So it literally at that point felt like the best night of my life. Like, the music is great, dancing with this girl, everything is fantastic. And then the thing happens that unfortunately happened all the time at parties in Brooklyn, which is someone pulls a gun and starts shooting up. Now, there's 2 different ways that kind of goes down, but they have the same result because you don't know the intent. People even to this day will fire sort of celebrity shots, celebratory shots in the air when it's like a good time, right? There are parties I've been to and people do that, and the party keeps going because you can kind of you know the intent. I mean, and it's hard out to know because you don't really know. But if you're, I think what it depends, and this is my wild guess here, the people immediately around the gun person is what triggers the thing, right? So if you're next to somebody who's just feeling the music and is excited and shoots up in the air, and you don't panic and react, then everybody else knows it's good, right? Now, which, like, I've been that person too, right? Like, and I think other cultures do that. Like, I think there's some Middle Eastern cultures that do that at weddings and stuff. But like, shots in the air at a good time is like a certain Caribbean thing. And then there are times where it's like, no, this is a different intent, and everybody's gonna run, right? So this particular night, I'm dancing, and then there's like pop, 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 pop. And my friends and I, for a second, are incredulous, right? Like, because we were having such a good time. And there's a part of you that's just like, oh, we have to run now. And you're just resisting it. You hate the feeling. So I reacted a little slower than everybody else. And because I reacted a little bit slower, when people started to push out of the club, I wasn't moving with the crowd. I was standing still. So I got, bumped. And I did not realize this at the time, how close I was to the gunman, right? Like, I was so into, like, the person I was dancing with. I think I was facing away when I was dancing with her, and the shots were back here. And I was just like, come on, like, we got to leave, right? And so when I'm hit and I stumble back, I hit somebody. and I turn around and I realize that it's the gunman. And the guy, it is so weird even to talk about this. I've written about it to talk about this weird. Anyway, the guy raises the gun, and he points it at me. And he's, I don't know, arm's length, like he's really, really close. Very, very casually, he points it at me. And the music has already stopped, right? And you hear people like yelling, but sounds are really right and clear. And this happens really fast, even though like I'm taking forever to like draw it out. But he points it at me and he pulls the trigger. Um, and the I can distinctly hear the click. It must have been a revolver. I don't remember, but I can hear the click of the hammer falling, but nothing happened. So I don't know whether it was a misfire or he was out of rounds. All I know is I was frozen. He points this thing. I hear the click, and that's the sound that sort of like then unlocks me, right? So then I rush past him, and then we're out on Church Avenue. I'm not even sure, like, in the immediacy of it, if the friends I was with saw the interaction,
Right.
because I then hooked back up with them once we got outside, right? Once we got outside, and for a second we're like, okay, where's so and so? Like where's so and so? And then once we had enough of a sense of where everyone, this is all happening really, really fast. What the next strongest memory is myself and my really good friend from Brooklyn at the time, Ron. He and I were both like runners, and we like sprinted back down to our block, which is 42nd Street, just like a couple blocks away, just kind of racing. And I just remember us laughing. You know what I mean? Like we're just sprinting like at top speed, like racing each other, and we're just like laughing, And we get to our block and we stop, and then we kind of look back, and then the cops are coming, and they never talked about it. Like I didn't tell anybody what happened inside that club at all. Like not until I wrote about it for the Village Voice 10 years later, maybe maybe. I think the laughter was sort of a manic way of you know compartmentalization. You sort
Yes.
of put it in
Yeah.
you put it in a box and then you just sort of leave. I'm not going to be so dramatic to say that was what life was like in New York or Brooklyn, like every day. That was not the case. But there's certainly enough moments that you kind of look back on and you're just like, it's a miracle that we got out of there. And then you also remember how many of your friends did not. I lost quite a few friends of my generation, in both Brooklyn and Freeport during those years. The late '80s, the mid to late '80s were not easy on young black men. I mean, it's not today, but just
Yeah.
the crucible in which I was a teenager and the places that I grew up.